Hey guys, I'm Alex. Tonight, we're diving into finding quiet in a noisy market street. A meditation not just on external noise, but on the kind that rises inside you too, uninvited and often unnoticed. Welcome to Stillness and Strength channel, my quiet little corner of the internet where we breathe, reflect, and return to what truly matters. The world may not be yours to control, but your mind, that's your kingdom. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. I love knowing who's on the other side of this quiet night. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step into the street, and the sound hits you like a tide, scooters swarming like bees, vendors shouting over one another, a dog barking from somewhere unseen. Your breath skips for a second, not because of danger, but because you weren't ready. You never are really for the first moment of noise. You thought you could meet the world quietly today, but the world didn't get the message. So you walk slowly, your sandals scraping against warm concrete. Around you, the market street pulses with life, impatient, indifferent, and full of its own dramas. A woman yells prices into a microphone, her voice echoing unnaturally off the corrugated walls. Someone plays distorted pop music from a portable speaker, the bass struggling to make sense of itself. Children laugh too loudly. A man coughs without covering his mouth. A couple argues in the distance, the sharpness of their words cutting through all the rest. And you just want to buy fruit. But there it is again, the familiar rise of something in your chest. Is it tension? Irritation? Fatigue? You don't label it, not yet. Instead, you just notice. This is the first practice of the evening, observation without reaction. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. So what happens when you do not realize it? When every voice, every flash of light, every sudden horn feels like a theft, a robbery of peace. You keep walking. You tell yourself this street is just a street, but in truth it's a test, a philosopher's obstacle course, and you're in the thick of it now. Somewhere to your left, a fan creaks from a ceiling that looks far too unstable to hold it. Sweat traces the line of your spine. The air smells like fish sauce and diesel and something faintly metallic, an honest cocktail of city life. And it's here, right here, that you begin to ask, where do I end and where does the world begin? Because that's the first question noise brings up. It forces you to define yourself against something else. You pass a flower cart, petals half wilted in the sun, and you notice a strange contradiction. Even beauty screams here. The vendor has strapped a speaker to the cart playing romantic music at full volume, as if the roses weren't enough. You don't blame them. In a place like this, subtlety goes unnoticed. To survive here, you must be louder than your neighbor or at least more persistent. But something inside you resists this. Not out of pride, not out of judgment, just a quiet suspicion that there must be another way. Seneca spoke of it, the inner citadel, the place inside you untouched by noise, untouched by chaos. A fortress not of stone but of perception. So where is yours? You take a breath, not a dramatic one, just enough to feel the air enter you. You hold it for one heartbeat, then two. You exhale slowly. The street doesn't change, but something inside you does, and that, you realize, is the beginning of everything. A scooter nearly brushes your elbow. A child shrieks with delight as she chases a bubble. A grandmother slaps her hands against her thighs, calling a stubborn dog to follow her. You're still walking, still surrounded. But the question now is not how to escape this market. It's how to walk through it with peace intact. Because maybe peace isn't quiet. Maybe peace is attention. A new wave of sound crashes, a delivery truck unloading crates of glass bottles, the sharp clink ringing across the sidewalk. A man curses in two languages. Another laughs, not kindly but loudly. You stop beside a stack of watermelons. You're not looking at them. You're just using them as a shield for a moment. And here, with your back against their cool green skins, you remember something Epictetus said. It's not things that disturb us, but our judgments about them. So what if this isn't noise? What if this is music, just a genre you haven't learned to dance to? You don't have to like it. You don't have to enjoy every note. But what if, just for today, you stop treating it as the enemy? The chaos is still here. But maybe it doesn't have to enter you. You ask yourself quietly, what do I lose when I insist the world be silent? And more than that, what kind of strength could grow in me if I didn't fight the noise but observed it gently, like watching birds in a stormy sky? No answers come, and that's okay. You step away from the watermelons, adjust the strap of your bag, and continue deeper into the street. The market has not changed, but something in you has softened, and you know it. You take a left. It's not the way you plan to go, but something in your feet seems to decide before your mind does. A quieter alley, perhaps, or just curiosity. You're not sure. But the sound dips ever so slightly here, not silence, not even close, but the decibel drops. A sigh of relief you didn't know your body needed. Then you see him. An old man sits beside a low wooden cart, stacked with fruit so carefully arranged it almost looks like sculpture. Dragon fruits like bright fists. Green oranges, star apples, their skins catching bits of stray light as people walk past. He doesn't shout. No mic, no recorded jingle, no sign even. He sits still, hands resting on his knees, back straight, watching. Not blankly, but with the kind of attention that sees without judging. You slow down just slightly. Not enough to be noticed, but enough to feel. Nobody else pauses at his cart. There are louder stalls nearby, flashier, younger sellers with rehearsed routines and aggressive smiles. But this man, he's stillness in the middle of noise. And it makes you wonder, what does he know that I don't? You stop. Now you're clearly standing in front of him. The fruit is beautiful, the arrangement almost reverent. You pick up a mangosteen, cool, perfectly round. He nods once, doesn't speak. You don't speak either. You hand him a few coins. He places the fruit in a thin bag, folds the top carefully, and hands it to you with both hands. A gesture as soft as a bow. Then he looks at you, not to sell, not to charm, but just to see. And in that brief glance, something in you quiets. It's strange how silence shared between two strangers can feel more intimate than words. You walk away slowly, bag in hand, and you realize something. The stillness you just felt didn't come from the environment. It came from him, from his choice not to participate in the noise. It was an act of rebellion, but a peaceful one. You think of Epictetus again. Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. This man wasn't fighting the chaos. He was simply not feeding it. He was free, not because the market had changed for him, but because he refused to let it dictate his energy. And now, because of that, you feel free, even if just for a minute. You pass another vendor yelling prices. Passers-by shouting to each other across motorbike lanes. You hear someone slapping a plastic chair to shoo away a dog. And yet, all this sound, it doesn't hook you like it did before. Because now you carry something else. A single image. A man selling fruit in silence. And the thought lingers, what happens when I stop yelling inwardly? That's the real noise, isn't it? The voice that narrates, judges, reacts. The voice that compares and demands. That rehearses future conversations and rewrites the past. The market is loud, yes, but your mind, it can be louder. And the fruit seller showed you what's possible when you choose to withhold your own noise. A woman bumps into you. Doesn't apologize. Her phone's pressed to her ear, her voice sharp, rising. You smile. Not because you're above her, but because you remember now that your reaction is yours to control. And that's power, not the kind that dominates. The kind that simply doesn't flinch. You walk further into the maze of stalls. A man in a hoodie swings a cleaver through bone behind a butcher's counter. The crack of steel against wood echoes. Raw, immediate. You used to brace at that sound. Now you just notice. You ask yourself, what if control isn't about muting the world but staying rooted in it? There's a fruit in your bag and an image in your heart. a man who needed nothing from the noise. And now, neither do you. Another sound pulls your attention, not loud but persistent. A crackling, staticky buzz like a radio just out of tune. You turn your head, scanning the market's edges. There, a man hunched over a battered pushcart, fiddling with something metallic and broken. He slaps at a rusted speaker mounted on the side. Slaps it again. No change. The music, or what's left of it, plays in fits. Sometimes a word gets through, then dissolves into static. The man curses at the machine. He pulls the wire, spits on the knobs, smacks the speaker one more time. Still nothing. You stop again and watch. Not out of mockery, just recognition. Because haven't you done the same? Not with a radio, maybe, but with life, with other people, with plans that refuse to unfold the way you wrote them in your head. How often have you raised your voice at the broken thing, hoping volume might fix it? You stand there, listening to him grow more frustrated. Each attempt louder, more erratic. He doesn't see you, doesn't see anyone. His whole world is the stubborn machine that won't obey. And it occurs to you, he's not angry at the speaker. He's angry at not being heard. The radio is a symbol, a mirror, a prayer to be louder than silence. You've been there too. You remember moments when you pushed your emotions harder than they needed to go, not because the situation demanded it, but because you needed to feel in control. Needed to know that someone, something, was listening. Marcus Aurelius said, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this, you have the power to revoke at any moment." But sometimes, revoking feels like defeat, like saying this doesn't matter when your ego wants it to. So you stand there quietly, watching someone else go through it, watching his frustration loop like a fire that feeds on its own heat. And a question rises in you. What if the noise inside isn't trying to hurt you but trying to be acknowledged? It doesn't need to be fixed, just witnessed. The man eventually gives up. He slams the speaker off with a harsh click, breathes hard, wipes his brow. Then he sits on a plastic crate and lights a cigarette. For a few seconds, he just stares at nothing. And suddenly, the whole street seems softer around him. You take one more look and then keep walking. His silence now is heavier than the sound was, and something in that feels honest. You think about your own broken radios, the parts of you you've tried to force into harmony, the ways you've wanted your life to broadcast clearly on cue without interference. And you ask, what would happen if I let the static be part of the song? The market goes on, a horn blasts, a child cries. Someone's dragging a crate, its legs scraping painfully across tile. But you're not walking away from the noise anymore. You're walking through it with curiosity now. The noise isn't just clutter, it's language. And when you stop fighting it, you hear more than sound. You hear longing, tension, hope. You hear other people really hear them. And maybe, just maybe, you start to hear yourself too. The scent finds you before the image does. It's delicate at first, floral, light, almost imaginary, like something carried by a memory rather than wind. You pause mid-step, and only then do you notice the small table by the wall. A woman sits beside it, threading jasmine blossoms into tiny garlands. She doesn't sell them loudly. There's no sign, no speaker, just a tray of blossoms and fingers that move as if they've done this for centuries. All around her, the market rages. Motorbike fumes coat the air. A garbage cart trundles by, its wheels groaning. Somewhere, someone fries something in old oil, and the smell of smoke clings to your skin like guilt. But here at this table, the air bends. Or maybe, just maybe, you bend, you step closer instinctively. You don't speak, she doesn't look up. Her hands are busy. Jasmine, string knot. Jasmine, string knot. The repetition almost meditative. You breathe in again. This time it cuts through the exhaust, the sweat, the burnt oil. And suddenly you're aware of a truth you didn't know you were avoiding. Beauty doesn't need clean surroundings to exist. That's the second Stoic paradox tonight. We often wait for ideal conditions before we allow ourselves to notice the sacred. But here it is, in the dirt, in the heat, in the middle of it all, whispering, not screaming. It makes you think of that line from Seneca. No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself. And what is jasmine, blooming here if not proof? Proof that something soft can survive in harsh places, that something fragrant can share air with rot and not become less itself. You kneel a little to see closer. She's tying the stems so precisely, it's almost like prayer. She could be anywhere in a temple, in a ceremony, in silence, and yet she's here, selling beauty by the strand. A motorbike backfires behind you, startling you. Your shoulders flinch. The woman doesn't even pause. Jasmine, string not. Her rhythm is untouched. And you wonder, what rhythm of mine have I abandoned to the noise? How many times have you let your environment decide your pace? How often have you slowed your art, your thoughts, your gentleness, just because the world outside was moving too fast? This woman doesn't resist the market. She's not screaming into it nor retreating from it. She's threading flowers, that's it, that's enough. She finishes a garland and places it on the tray. Only then does she glance up at you, briefly, kindly, not expecting anything. Then she goes back to work. You don't need to buy one. The gift's already been given. You walk on, carrying the scent with you, or maybe the idea of the scent. It clings to the folds of your awareness, reminding you that quiet beauty doesn't demand space. It creates it. You pass a metal cart where two men are arguing over ice. A speaker blares a lottery number call-out. A pigeon pecks at spilled rice on the pavement. None of it's changed, but you have jasmine in your nose, and an image in your mind, and a question in your heart. If beauty can bloom in smoke, what's stopping it from blooming in me right now, exactly as I am? You don't have an answer, but you keep walking anyway. There's a sudden shout behind you and then laughter, high-pitched, unfiltered. You turn your head just in time to see three children dart past, barefoot and bright-eyed, their legs moving faster than their sense of balance. One of them trips over a broom handle but recovers mid-fall, letting out a triumphant whoop. They vanish into a cloud of smoke. It rolls low over the street, soft and gray, like fog that lost its way. Someone's burning cardboard nearby. You catch the sour tang of it, bitter, industrial, unmistakably human. Not the kind of smoke that makes you stop and admire the light. And yet the children ran through it laughing. No hesitation. No complaint. No, I wish this was different. Just movement, just joy. And it makes you pause, because you remember being like that once before you learned to catalog discomfort, to assign meaning to inconvenience. Before every bad smell had to be escaped, every wrong sound fixed. Children don't separate joy from environment. They don't wait for ideal conditions. They run, shout, play, even through smoke. You take a few steps forward and watch the haze settle. It hangs heavy over a line of fruit stands, turning everything slightly sepia. But the image isn't sad, it's cinematic, like something out of an old film where truth shows up more clearly than in color. And in that muted light, you ask yourself, have I confused discomfort with danger? Because that's the third paradox tonight. Your brain tells you to avoid the unpleasant, but your soul, if you let it speak, might tell you something else. That aliveness doesn't wait for clarity. It moves through confusion, not around it. Epictetus once reminded his students, don't hope that events will turn out the way you want. Welcome events in whichever way they happen. This is the path to peace. So what if you could move like those children, not recklessly, but freely, without the need to edit reality first? A woman to your right waves a woven fan at her stall, stirring the smoke and the heat. Her face is flushed but calm. She doesn't leave. She doesn't scowl, she just adapts. The smoke isn't her enemy, it's her atmosphere. You realize then, most of life's peace isn't about eliminating discomfort. It's about refusing to make discomfort your identity. You walk on, a little slower now. The smoke clings to your shirt. You taste ash. And still you breathe, not through clenched teeth, but with a strange sort of acceptance. Because maybe the lesson is this: you can wait for the world to clear, or you can dance through the haze. And maybe that's what the children were doing. Dancing through it all, not despite the smoke, but with it. You smile, not because you feel better necessarily, but because you feel more true. And isn't that the real calm? It begins quietly, the kind of sound you might miss if you weren't paying attention. A low, tense exchange of voices behind a food stall, then sharper tones, louder syllables. The unmistakable sound of a fight beginning, and not the kind that ends with a laugh. You don't see the faces at first, just the backs of two workers in aprons, their movements jagged. One of them slams a ladle on the metal counter. A plastic bowl clatters to the floor. The crowd doesn't react. Or maybe it's just used to this human heat spilling out into shared space. You freeze, not because you fear for safety, but because something ancient stirs in your body. Your muscles tighten, chest braces. That feeling you've known since childhood. A fight is happening somewhere nearby, and your peace is no longer allowed. Isn't it strange how quickly we inherit other people's tension? You don't know these men. You don't know the reason, but already your pulse is trying to mirror theirs. You step back slightly, instinctively. And then it happens. Not outside you, inside, a memory, your father maybe, or a stranger on a bus. Or someone you once loved yelling things they didn't mean, or maybe they did. You're not sure anymore. All you know is, your body remembers. Even when your mind forgets, your body does not. This is what Stoics meant when they talked about reflexes, not just of the limbs, but of thought, of feeling. Old grooves worn deep by time and repetition. So you stand still for a moment, not in fear, but in inquiry. Why this reaction? Why does the noise of others feel like a threat to your peace? Seneca said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." And yet the imagination is real, isn't it? Not in fact, but in impact. So here's your task now, not to stop the fight, it's not yours, but to witness your own response to it. You breathe. Let the voices rise. Let the bowl clatter. Let the oil hiss on the hot pan. And you stay rooted like a tree in wind. The workers don't throw punches. One storms off toward the back. The other starts ladling soup into bowls, faster than before, as if control over the ladle might compensate for the control lost elsewhere. And you remain still. Something in you says, don't leave yet. Because in this tiny storm, you're watching your own inner weather. And you're realizing just how many of your emotions aren't born of this moment, but borrowed from past ones. You look around. A woman at a neighboring stall keeps chopping herbs like nothing happened. A child next to her sips soda through a straw, eyes wide but unmoved. The market adapts, swallows the noise, keeps going. And maybe you can too. Not by pretending nothing happened, but by refusing to add your own echo to the clash. You take another breath, not to calm yourself, but to anchor. This is presence, not the absence of disturbance, but the refusal to be dislodged by it. And suddenly the fight feels smaller, not insignificant, but no longer defining. It came, it stirred, and now it's fading. You step forward again. Your legs move without the bracing they held a moment ago. Your heart slows. And a question arises, gentle, curious. What if peace isn't what you carry into calm places, but what you learn to hold in the middle of storms? You keep walking, and behind you the kitchen goes quiet again. You've gone deeper into the market now, past the flashier stalls, past the speakers, past the food carts with laminated menus and laminated smiles. The path narrows slightly, flanked by old walls stained with the fingerprints of time. And then you hear it, a single bird singing, not timidly, not in the way birds sometimes chirp in the early hours, cautious and half asleep. No, this is a full, confident song. High, clear, defiant. You stop walking. Because it doesn't make sense. It's noon, harsh light, crowds, noise, and here in the middle of it all, a bird sings like dawn never ended. You look around for it, squint toward the tangled wires above. It's there somewhere, hidden in the shadows of the eaves or perched on a dusty cable. You can't see it, but you don't need to. You can feel it. And something about it touches you more than it should, because the bird isn't waiting. It isn't waiting for the heat to pass. It isn't waiting for quiet. It isn't waiting for the right time to sing. It sings now, in contradiction, in rebellion, in freedom. And you feel the strange ache of someone who's forgotten how to do that. When did you stop honoring your own song? When did you start needing conditions to be perfect before you let yourself express joy? You stand there, the world rushing around you and the bird keeps singing. And for a second, you feel shame. Not heavy, just the soft kind, the kind that reminds you of all the times you silenced yourself, held back an insight, bit your tongue, buried your brightness because someone else's shadow was too loud. But that shame quickly turns to something else. Not pride, not regret, permission. Because if a bird can sing here in the heat above fried oil and crying children and fish guts, then what's stopping you? And maybe this is what Marcus Aurelius meant when he said, "Be like the rock that the waves keep crashing over. It stands unmoved, and the raging of the sea falls still around it." But not just unmoved. Unmoved and still true to itself. Because the Stoic doesn't just endure. The Stoic remembers who they are in the middle of it all, keeps their melody, doesn't wait for the world to quiet down before they speak their truth. So the question hangs in the warm, loud air. What is your song? And when will you let yourself sing it? You smile just slightly. Not because you've figured it out, but because now you know what to look for. You walk again. One step. Another. The song fades not because the bird stops, but because you move past it. But its echo lives in your pace now. A rhythm that says, I don't have to wait. I can be present and expressive. I can live and love, even when the world forgets how to listen. You glance up one more time just in case you might catch a glimpse of feathers. You don't, but it doesn't matter. You heard enough. And it changed something. You turn another corner expecting more of the same. More shouts. More smoke. More scooters narrowly avoiding each other like dancers in a chaotic waltz. But instead, the noise softens here, not gone, just muffled by the narrow alley and the tall buildings that rise like stone sentinels on either side. And then you hear it. A violin. Not a recording. Not a polished performance. A raw, slightly uneven melody like a song remembered from long ago, replayed by muscle memory rather than sheet music. It leads you to a small square, barely more than a widening of the alley. There in the center a street performer stands, but he's not performing for anyone. No audience. No open case with coins. Just him, the violin, and the invisible thread connecting the two. His eyes are closed. His body sways. His bow glides over the strings with careful intensity. This is not showmanship. This is devotion. You stop. You don't want to interrupt. You barely breathe. Because here's the paradox again, the kind that makes something deep in you sit up and pay attention. He's playing as if the world is listening, even though no one is. You lean against a nearby wall, hands in your pockets, and observe. There's something sacred about someone doing what they love when no one is watching. You think of the times you've created something, a line of writing, a painting, a meal, a thought, and immediately wondered if it was good enough to share. You think of how quickly you moved from creation to comparison, from joy to justification. But this man, he's not trying to be seen. He's trying to be. And you remember a line from Marcus Aurelius, as if it floats in on the violin's breath. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. And now, in this moment, you understand it more deeply than ever before. Because being something, truly being, has nothing to do with who's watching. The melody stumbles for a second, a note slightly off. He frowns, opens his eyes, adjusts his grip, then begins again right where he left off. No apology, no shame, just correction, grace without performance. You wonder, how much of my life have I lived for the eyes of others? And further still, what would I do with all my heart if no one ever praised me for it? The violinist finishes the phrase. He lowers the bow, not dramatically, but like someone placing a sacred object down with care. He still doesn't notice you. He stretches his fingers, rolls his neck, closes his eyes again. The silence lasts only a breath. Then he lifts the violin and begins a new song, gentler this time. Slower, almost like a lullaby he's playing for himself. You don't stay for the whole thing. You don't need to. The gift's already been given. You turn and walk away, heart strangely full. Because now you're carrying something else. A reminder that you don't need to be seen to be sincere. You don't need applause to be aligned. The act itself is the reward, virtue for its own sake. And as you merge back into the market's rhythm with all its chaos and clatter, you ask yourself, what would change if I did what I loved in secret? Would it still feel real? Or would it feel even more true? The violin fades behind you, but the question stays. The heat presses a little harder now. It's midday in full, shadows shrink, colors bleach. Even the scooters seem slower, their engines growling more than roaring. You find yourself drawn toward the edge of a crosswalk, eyes scanning the shifting crowd. Then it happens. A man steps off a curb. A wallet slips from his back pocket and lands soundlessly on the pavement. No one sees it. He doesn't notice. Just keeps walking, disappearing into the current of bodies. You step forward and pick it up. Leather, worn, still warm from his pocket. No drama, no pause in the market's pulse. You hold it for a moment longer than you need to. Not because you're tempted, but because suddenly the whole world seems to slow around this small object. Because in your hands now is a choice. No one is watching. There's no spotlight, no public test, no Stoic challenge written in bold letters. Just you, a wallet, and a man who is now 20 steps ahead, still unaware. And yet this is the test, isn't it? The philosopher's moment. The quiet opportunity to practice what you claim to believe. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Just that you do the right thing. The rest doesn't matter." But it's easy to nod at that when the right thing is obvious and acknowledged. When someone claps for your goodness. When your morality gets likes. But here, now, no one would know if you slipped the wallet into your bag and kept walking. And that's exactly why this moment matters. You jog forward, tap the man's shoulder. He turns, surprised. His eyes drop to the wallet in your hand. A mix of confusion, then recognition, then relief. "Oh, thank you," he says awkwardly. "I didn't even." You nod, smile once. You don't need to explain. You're not here for the story. You walk away before the thanks can become anything more. And yet something inside feels different now. Not brighter, not cleaner, just aligned. Because this is what the Stoics meant when they spoke of integrity. Doing the right thing not because it's praised, but because it feels right. Because it fits who you are becoming. Not who you pretend to be, not who the world thinks you are, but the self that wakes with you and falls asleep in your skin. You find a bench beside a tea stall. Sit. Let the moment settle. The market continues. A radio plays a love song in broken Vietnamese. A child tugs at his mother's sleeve, begging for a snack. Somewhere close, ice clinks into a glass, a satisfying, precise sound. And yet you're still holding that tiny moment in your mind, not for pride, but for proof. Proof that character isn't made in grand gestures. It's made in small choices, invisible ones. And now, as you sip a cool cup of sugarcane juice, a thought lands softly, like dust on your shoulder. If I am the only one who knows what I did today, is that enough? You don't answer aloud, but you know. The market bends again. A curve in the path leads you between two rows of fish stalls, their blue tarps fluttering in the thick air like flags of a forgotten nation. You don't come here often, the smell is sharp, the floor slick, and the atmosphere always feels colder, as if water carries a deeper kind of silence. You walk slower here, partly to avoid slipping, mostly because the energy changes. It's quieter, but not because there's less noise. It's the kind of noise more elemental, more grounded, water sloshing in plastic buckets, knives scraping against scales, ice cracking in shallow foam boxes. And then you feel it before you see it, eyes. You turn instinctively and meet her gaze. She's behind a wide stall, not the most decorated. No bright banner, no gimmicks. Just a wooden table stacked with fish so fresh they still shimmer under the overhead light. She doesn't speak, doesn't smile, doesn't try to sell you anything, but her eyes, they see you. It's a rare kind of looking, not curiosity, not judgment, just presence. You hold the glance for a moment, then another. Something in you softens, not out of emotion but awareness. Because in a space full of transaction, her stillness feels like truth. She wipes her hands on a cloth, leans on the counter, doesn't say a word, and you remember a line from Epictetus. We have two ears and one mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. But it's not about listening to words. Not always. Sometimes it's about listening to being. You don't ask her name, you don't buy fish, you simply nod. She nods back. And in that moment, something old passes between you, a kind of recognition, like two quiet people acknowledging each other in a too loud room. You walk on. And for some reason, her presence stays with you longer than any shout or song, because there was no performance. Just a woman standing in her space, eyes steady, fully here. And it makes you wonder, what does my gaze offer to others? Am I looking to assess, to compare, to analyze? Or am I seeing, really seeing, what's in front of me without armor? You round the corner and enter back into the heart of the market. The noise returns like a wave. But now you carry her stillness, like a small stone in your pocket, like a compass that doesn't shout but always points true. You look at the faces around you and they look different now, not because they've changed, but because you're seeing through a quieter lens. There's a boy eating rice straight from a styrofoam box, sauce dripping down his chin. A vendor balancing a tray of snails on her head. A man asleep on a plastic chair, mouth open, arms crossed like he's guarding dreams. None of them are performing, they're just being. And so are you. And that, in its own quiet way, is more than enough. You feel it before you see it. The shift in rhythm. The market thins slightly here. Fewer stalls, wider gaps. The voices, while still present, lose their edge. You've wandered into a quieter corner not by design but by instinct. And that's when you notice the monk. He's not selling anything. Just sitting, cross-legged on a small straw mat beside a stone wall, his hands resting lightly in his lap. A donation bowl in front of him, but he makes no effort to draw attention. His eyes are half closed, not fully in meditation but not looking at anything either. He is simply still. And you, in your sweat-damp shirt, surrounded by plastic bags and exhaust and unfinished thoughts, feel suddenly like a tide meeting a mountain. You stop walking. It's not reverence, it's not guilt. It's something quieter than both, a recognition. That stillness is not always something you create. Sometimes you just stumble into it like a pool of shade on a burning path. And the monk doesn't need you to do anything, that's the strangest part. He doesn't perform peace, he is peace, without trying. You lower your head instinctively, a small bow. He nods gently in return. And in that tiny exchange, time loosens its grip. No words are spoken. And yet there is conversation, because you're no longer a tourist in your own experience. You've stepped, however briefly, into the present moment fully, without agenda. Marcus Aurelius might have smiled at this. He wrote, "Nowhere you can go is more peaceful, more free of interruptions than your own soul. Retreat to it often." And yet how often do you? How often do you mistake motion for meaning? Volume for truth? The monk's silence becomes your mirror. You sit not beside him but nearby on the edge of a planter box. You don't close your eyes. You don't mimic his posture. You just sit. Let the weight shift from your legs to the earth. Let the noise pass like weather. And it does. You hear voices still, bargaining, calling, laughing, but they blur into background, like rain on a roof, like wind through dry leaves. You notice your breath, not because you're trying to meditate, but because it's the one thing that hasn't left you all day. In, out. You've done it thousands of times since entering this market, but now, for the first time, you feel it. This is enough, your body seems to say. No breakthrough, no enlightenment, just a small return. You glance back at the monk. His eyes are still soft, his breath steady, his bowl untouched. And you ask yourself, not urgently, not judgmentally, what is my version of that mat, that stillness, that silence? Not in a cave, not on a cushion, but right here in the noise, in the motion, in the mess. You sit for a few minutes longer, then rise. No revelation, no fanfare, just a quiet thank you to the space, to the moment, to the man. And as you walk away, you don't leave the stillness behind. You carry it, like a secret the market can't steal. A soft drizzle begins, the kind that doesn't demand shelter but still draws your attention. You look up. The sky has shifted almost imperceptibly. No thunder, no warning, just a gray that deepens like thought thickening into reflection. Umbrellas bloom across the market like slow-motion fireworks. Tarps are adjusted. Some vendors pull plastic sheets over their wares. Others simply shrug. Rain is part of the day here, not a disruption, just another ingredient. You pull up your hood, but then you stop. Let a few droplets find your skin. It's been a while since you let yourself get wet without complaint, and you wonder why that is. When did rain go from being an invitation to a problem? As a child, you ran into it, danced under it, laughed through it. It was never something to escape, it was something to feel. Now, though, the adult in you calculates moisture, damp clothes, mud on shoes, a wet phone. You chuckle softly at the realization. Your freedom isn't limited by your environment but by your reactions to it. That's the Stoic truth hiding in the drizzle. You walk slower, each drop a gentle percussion on your shoulders. And just ahead, you see a woman who isn't hurrying either. She's holding a plastic bag above her head, not effectively but symbolically. Her baby sleeps against her chest in a sling. Both of them soaked, both serene. You catch her eye for a second. She smiles. And in that smile is something you didn't know you needed, proof that discomfort and contentment can coexist, that you don't need everything to go your way in order to feel okay. Seneca once said, "What progress, you ask, have I made? I have begun to be a friend to myself." And maybe this is how it starts, not in lofty realizations or structured disciplines, but in small acceptances. Like letting the rain fall without fighting it. You keep walking. Some people scurry for cover, others stay, adjusting their pace. The market becomes softer in the rain, colors mute, movements slow. Voices grow hushed like everyone's remembering their sharing space. The entire street feels gentler. Is it the rain, or is it your perception? Doesn't matter. Either way, you feel something shift. You pause beneath an awning, not to hide, just to observe. Raindrops trace slow lines down faded glass. A pigeon shakes itself dry on a wire. Water gathers in a plastic bowl beside a stand of peanuts. The scent of damp concrete rises, earthy, grounding. And you ask yourself, what if I stopped running from what's uncomfortable and started listening to it instead? Not solving, not avoiding, just listening. You step back into the drizzle. Let the water find you again. Let it blur the lines a little. And you smile not because everything is perfect, but because you no longer need it to be. You're not dry, but you're not drowning either. You're just here. And that is enough. You're almost at the edge of the market now. The chaos fades with every step, not because the world has changed, but because you have. You've been softened, sanded down, and something inside you feels quieter, not numb, just clear. You pass a man sweeping leaves, not with urgency, just rhythm. His broom is handmade, twigs bound together with twine. The leaves fall faster than he can sweep them, but he doesn't seem to mind. He just keeps sweeping. You pause again, unable to help yourself. There's something beautiful in this simple act, something timeless. A human moving against the tide, not to win, but because it's worth doing anyway. He doesn't notice you, doesn't need to. His presence is not performance. His action is not protest. It's just participation. And that, you realize, is its own kind of freedom. You think of all the things you've avoided doing in your life because they seemed futile. Conversations not had, projects not finished, dreams not started, all because of the fear that they wouldn't matter. But this man, he knows something different. He sweeps because it is time to sweep, not because it will stay clean, not because someone will applaud, but because it is his part. Epictetus once said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." And maybe this is what that looks like. A life of quiet responsibility. A task done fully, even when it's undone by nature moments later. You step closer and watch for a while. The broom swishes in wide arcs. The leaves resist, then slide. Some float back onto the path before he even finishes. But he doesn't flinch, doesn't curse the wind, just keeps moving. And you ask yourself, am I willing to do the right thing even when it won't last? Even when no one notices? Even when the world undoes it overnight? Because maybe that's the purest form of action, unhooked from outcome. done not for results but for alignment. A child runs past, scattering leaves again. The man chuckles, bends, begins again, not with frustration, with flow. You feel a strange gratitude rise in your chest, not for anything grand, just for this reminder. You don't need to control the wind to sweep your path. And that's another paradox, isn't it? You can act without attachment. You can care without clinging. You can engage without demanding a reward. You step away lighter, not because your burdens are gone, but because you're no longer dragging them across every thought. The market continues behind you, its heartbeat steady, its noise eternal. But here at the edge, things feel softer. You keep walking. And as you do, you carry a new kind of clarity. Doing what is yours to do is enough. Not because it lasts, but because it was done in truth. The street opens up ahead. The market gives way to a quieter stretch, a wide, dusty sidewalk bordered by weary trees and shuttered buildings. It feels like stepping out of a conversation you didn't know you were a part of. The noise behind you doesn't stop, but it softens like a memory already beginning to fade. And that's when you notice your hands. They're still relaxed. Your breath, unrushed. You've crossed through a storm of voices, smells, urgency, and somehow the storm didn't follow you out. It stayed where it was. You didn't fix the market. You didn't purify the air or silence the scooters or resolve the strangers' conflicts. You simply moved through it like water navigating stones. And you're still you. No better, you're more you than when you entered. This is what the Stoics meant by indifference, not apathy, not detachment, but the sacred clarity of knowing what belongs to you and what doesn't. A dog limps across the street, thin, gentle eyes. You crouch instinctively, not out of pity but out of presence. It pauses near you, tail wagging once, then continues on its way. There is no lesson here, just connection. And perhaps that's the deeper Stoic mystery. When you stop trying to control the world, you become more available to it. You're not guarding your peace now, you're sharing it. That's the paradox most people miss. Peace isn't a fortress. It's a flow. Not something to build high and defend, but something to carry lightly so others might feel it too. You walk a little further and in the distance you hear music again. Faint. A guitar this time. Someone strumming without urgency, without flair. Just letting the sound pass into the air, note by note. And you realize this entire walk, this winding path through a noisy market, hasn't been about escape at all. It's been about re-entry. Re-entering the world not as a victim of it, but as a quiet force within it. You don't have to rise above life to live wisely. You just have to remember who you are in the middle of it. A bird flies overhead. You don't know its name, you don't need to. The breeze shifts, and a single thought settles in so gently it feels like it's always been there. The world doesn't need your noise, it needs your clarity. You step forward, no agenda, no rush, simply and fully here. The sun lowers behind the buildings, and the market, though still alive, begins to slow. Lights flicker on overhead, casting long, golden reflections on the wet pavement. Vendors fold tarps. Children are called home. The scent of grilled meat fades